Every year, somewhere in the world, a war begins that a child never asked for. And every year, in the wreckage of that war, there is a story that no one expects, a story of a small, frightened girl who somehow, against every possible odd, grows up not just to survive, but to spend the rest of her life saving others. This is one of those stories. Before the war came, she was just a little girl in a small village, where the mornings smelled like fresh bread, and the evenings were filled with the sound of her mother's voice, calling her home for dinner. She was 7 years old, and her biggest worry was whether her father would let her stay outside a few minutes longer to chase the neighbor's hen through the courtyard. She did not know yet that the world could break. She did not know that safety was something that could be taken from you in a single night. The night it happened, she remembers the sound before she remembers anything else. A deep rolling thunder that did not come from the sky. Her mother's hands shaking as they pulled her from her bed. Her father's voice, low and urgent, telling her to run and not look back. She remembers the taste of dust in her mouth, and the orange light flickering against the dark, and the way the ground seemed to shudder beneath her small bare feet as she ran, holding tightly to a hand that within hours she would no longer be able to hold. By morning, the village she had known her whole life no longer existed. The house with the blue door was gone. The courtyard where she had chased the hen was buried under broken concrete and twisted metal. And somewhere in that wreckage, she lost the two people who had built her entire world. She does not like to describe that morning in detail. Even now, decades later, she simply says, "I became someone's daughter, and then I became no one's daughter, in the space of a single night." For days, she wandered with strangers, other families fleeing the same fire, the same fear. She does not remember how she ended up among them. Only that a woman with kind, tired eyes took her hand at some point, and did not let go. They walked for what felt like forever. Past collapsed bridges, past burning fields, past things a 7-year-old should never have to see. Eventually they reached a camp, rows and rows of canvas tents stretched across a barren stretch of land, filled with thousands of people who, like her, had lost everything but their lives. Life in the camp was not really life. It was survival, stretched thin across every single day. There was never enough food, never enough water, never enough warmth when the nights grew cold. She learned to sleep through the sound of other children crying. She learned to stand quietly in long lines for hours, holding an empty bowl, waiting for whatever meager ration would be handed out that day. She learned, too young, what it meant to be forgotten by the world, to be a name on a list, in a place most people would never think about, let alone visit. But it was in that camp, in the middle of all that loss, that something happened which would quietly shape the rest of her life. One evening, a man was carried into the medical tent, bleeding badly from a wound he had suffered while trying to find food outside the camp's boundary. She had followed the commotion as children do, and she stood at the entrance of that tent and watched. Inside, by the light of a single lantern, a weary aide doctor worked with a kind of calm, focused intensity she had never seen before. His hands moved quickly but gently. His voice was steady, even as the man cried out in pain. And slowly, impossibly, the bleeding stopped. The man lived. She did not have the words for it then, not really. But something inside her, something that had gone numb since the night she lost her parents, began to stir again. She remembers thinking, with the strange clarity that sometimes visits even a frightened child, I want to be the person who makes the bleeding stop. I want to be the reason someone gets to live instead of the reason someone dies. It was not a grand declaration. It was a quiet, private vow, made by a girl who owned nothing but the clothes on her back, and a memory she could not undo. The years that followed were not kind, and they did not hand her that vow on a silver platter. She spent her childhood moving between camps and temporary shelters, often separated from any real schooling, often hungry, often sick. There were long stretches where survival alone consumed every ounce of her energy, and the dream of becoming a doctor felt less like a plan and more like a story she told herself to get through the hardest nights. She has said in later years that there were many, many moments when she nearly let that dream go, moments of exhaustion, of grief that resurfaced without warning, of watching other children her age simply give up hope entirely. What kept her going, she says, was not some unshakable superhuman strength. It was much smaller than that. It was a single sentence a camp volunteer once said to her, almost in passing: "You survived for a reason, even if you don't know it yet." She held on to that sentence the way other children held on to stuffed toys or worn photographs. On the nights when grief crept back in, when she missed her mother's voice so much it physically hurt, she would repeat those words to herself until she could fall asleep. Eventually, through a combination of aid programs, the persistence of a teacher who refused to let her fall behind, and her own relentless determination, she found her way into a school. She was older than her classmates, behind in almost every subject, and painfully aware of how different her life had been from theirs. But she studied by candlelight when the power went out. She borrowed textbooks and copied pages by hand when she could not afford her own. She asked questions until teachers grew tired of answering them, and then she asked more. Science became her refuge. In the orderly logic of biology and chemistry, she found something the war had never been able to offer her: a sense of control. A sense that if she understood how the body worked, how it broke and how it healed, she might finally be able to protect someone the way no one had been able to protect her family. Every exam she passed felt like a small victory against everything that had tried to stop her. Every late night spent studying felt like she was keeping the promise she had made to herself in that lantern-lit medical tent. All those years ago, the road to medical school was longer and harder than most people will ever understand. There were scholarship applications rejected without explanation. There were moments when tuition costs seemed impossibly out of reach, when she wondered if her dream had simply been too big for a girl with her background. There were relatives and well-meaning strangers who gently suggested she choose something more practical, something more certain. But she had already survived the least certain thing a human being can survive. Uncertainty did not frighten her the way it frightened others. When the acceptance letter finally arrived, she has said she read it 7 times before she believed it was real. She sat alone with that letter in her hands, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to cry, not from grief, but from something closer to relief, and closer still to gratitude. She thought of her mother. she thought of her father. She thought of the little girl who had once stood in the doorway of a lantern-lit tent, watching a stranger fight to save a life. That little girl, she realized, had finally been heard. Medical school was its own kind of battlefield: sleepless nights, brutal exams, the constant pressure of proving she belonged in rooms where few people looked like her or came from where she came from. But she carried something into those years that many of her classmates did not have: an unshakable understanding of exactly why she was there. When the material felt overwhelming, she would remind herself of the sound of that man's cries in the medical tent, and the silence that followed once the bleeding stopped. That silence, she says, was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard, and she wanted to be able to create it for others, again and again, for the rest of her life. She graduated with honors, though she rarely mentions that detail unless asked directly. What she talks about instead is her first day walking into a hospital, not as a frightened bystander but as a doctor. She talks about the strange, almost dizzying sensation of putting on a white coat for the first time and catching her own reflection in a window and seeing, just for a moment, both versions of herself standing there together: the dust-covered child from the rubble, and the woman who had fought her way out of it. Today, she works with patients who remind her, in small and unexpected ways, of the people she grew up alongside: people who have lost homes, lost family, lost the simple safety of knowing that tomorrow will look like today. She has a particular gentleness with frightened children in her care, a way of kneeling down to meet them at eye level, of speaking softly until their trembling eases. Colleagues have noticed it. Patients' families have noticed it. She rarely explains where that gentleness comes from. She does not need to. It comes from a memory that never left her: a girl standing in a doorway watching, hoping, promising herself something the world had no reason to believe she could ever keep. She has since spoken, in quiet moments and to those close to her, about why she never abandoned that promise, even in her darkest years. Her answer is almost always the same. She says that surviving a war does not automatically make you strong. What makes you strong is what you choose to do with the fact that you survived at all. She could have let her grief harden into bitterness. She could have let the unfairness of her childhood convince her that kindness was pointless in a world capable of so much destruction. Instead, she let her grief become purpose. She let her loss become the reason she now spends every single day trying to make sure other people do not have to feel as powerless as she once felt in that tent. Watching a stranger save a life she could not save herself. Her story is not one of easy, uncomplicated triumph. She still carries the weight of everything she lost, and she has said openly that some nights the memories return uninvited, sharp and raw, as if no time has passed at all. Healing, she says, was never about forgetting. It was about learning to carry the pain without letting it decide who she would become. That distinction between surviving pain and being defined by it is, in many ways, the entire heart of her story. If there is one thing she hopes people take from her life, it is this: that even in the middle of the worst thing that has ever happened to you, some quiet part of you may still be watching, still learning, still deciding almost without your permission who you are going to become when the fire finally goes out. She was 7 years old when she lost everything. She did not choose the war. She did not choose the loss. But somewhere in the ashes of that loss, she chose, again and again, over years of hunger and grief and doubt, to become someone who heals, instead of someone who simply survives. Today, when she walks into a hospital room, she is not just a doctor. She is proof living, breathing proof that even the deepest wounds a person can carry do not have to be the end of their story. Sometimes, they are simply the beginning. If this story moved you the way it moved us to tell it, let us know by commenting the word "free" below, and we will send you our free reflection guide on rebuilding your life after loss. Because healing, like hers, so often begins with a single, quiet decision to keep going.